Vijay Mallya was born into a world of immense privilege and corporate power. His father, Vijay Mallya, was a formidable industrialist who had painstakingly built the United Breweries Group into a sprawling conglomerate. From a young age, Vijay was groomed to take over this empire, a destiny he seemed to embrace with natural flair and ambition. He inherited not just a collection of successful companies, but also a reputation for shrewd business acumen. After his father's sudden death in 1983, a 28-year-old Vijay Mallya stepped up to become the chairman of the group. He didn't just maintain the status quo, he expanded the empire with an aggressive and flamboyant style that would soon become his trademark. He was seen as a modern, dynamic leader ready to take Indian business to the global stage. Under his leadership, the United Breweries Group diversified and grew exponentially. Mallya consolidated his control over the liquor business, making Kingfisher beer a household name not just in India but across the world. He ventured into new sectors, including engineering, fertilizers, and even media, displaying an insatiable appetite for growth. His personal brand became synonymous with extravagance and a lavish lifestyle, earning him the moniker, the King of Good Times. He owned a Formula One team, luxury yachts, sprawling mansions across the globe, and threw opulent parties that were the talk of the town. This larger-than-life persona was part of his business strategy, projecting an image of boundless success and confidence that attracted investors and partners alike. This period marked the zenith of Mallya's influence and power. He was not just a businessman. He was a celebrity, a member of parliament, and a symbol of India's post-liberalization economic boom. His annual Kingfisher calendar, featuring top models in exotic locations, became a cultural phenomenon, further cementing his brand's association with glamour and aspiration. He projected an aura of invincibility, a man for whom money was no object and for whom every venture turned to gold. This carefully cultivated image of success was central to his identity and his business operations, making him one of the most visible and celebrated tycoons in the country's recent history. However, this relentless expansion and flamboyant spending masked underlying risks. While the liquor business remained a cash cow, some of his other ventures were not as successful. The drive for diversification sometimes led to acquisitions and investments that were not strategically sound, stretching the group's resources thin. The persona of the King of Good Times required constant fueling, both financially and in terms of public perception. This constant need to maintain an image of spectacular success would later prove to be a critical factor in the decisions that led to his dramatic and public downfall. A fall that, honestly, few could have predicted during these heady days of triumph. In 2005, at the peak of his influence, Vijay Mallya decided to conquer the skies. He launched Kingfisher Airlines, a venture born from his personal passion for aviation and his desire to create a world-class Indian airline. The launch was spectacular, perfectly in line with his extravagant brand. Kingfisher Airlines was not intended to be just another carrier. It was positioned as a premium, full-service airline that would bring glamour and luxury back to air travel. Mallya promised an experience that would mirror his own lifestyle, marketing it heavily with the tagline "Fly the Good Times." The airline was an extension of the Kingfisher brand, designed to offer unparalleled service and comfort to its passengers. The airline quickly became immensely popular with the Indian public. It was a breath of fresh air in a market dominated by no-frills carriers and legacy state-run operators. Passengers were treated to services that were previously unheard of in domestic Indian aviation, such as personal in-flight entertainment systems for every seat, gourmet meals, and cabin crew trained to offer five-star hospitality. The attention to detail was meticulous, and the brand's association with luxury resonated with a new generation of Indian travelers. For a time, Kingfisher Airlines was voted the best airline in India and won several international awards for its service quality, becoming the preferred choice for business and leisure travelers alike. Mallya's ambition did not stop at domestic dominance. He had grand plans for international expansion, envisioning Kingfisher Airlines as a global player. In 2007, he made a bold move by acquiring the struggling low-cost carrier Air Deccan. The strategy was to use Air Deccan's license to fly on international routes, a move that allowed Kingfisher to bypass a rule that required domestic airlines to operate for 5 years before they could start international services. This acquisition, however, was a complex and expensive undertaking. It saddled Kingfisher with significant debt and the difficult task of integrating a low-cost carrier into its premium service model, a clash of cultures and operations that would create significant challenges down the line. Despite the underlying financial strains, the public perception of Kingfisher Airlines remained overwhelmingly positive in its initial years. The airline became a status symbol, and flying Kingfisher was seen as an experience in itself. Mallya was personally involved in every aspect of the airline's branding and service, often seen greeting passengers on flights and ensuring the standards he promised were being met. This personal touch, combined with the airline's superior service, created a loyal customer base. The airline was the crown jewel of his empire, a high-flying symbol of his success. But beneath the polished exterior, the financial foundations were already beginning to show signs of weakness. The initial success and popularity of Kingfisher Airlines could not sustain it against the harsh realities of the aviation industry. The sector is known for its wafer-thin profit margins, intense competition, and high operational costs, particularly the volatile price of aviation fuel. Kingfisher's business model, which focused on providing a premium experience at competitive fares, was incredibly expensive to maintain. While it won over passengers, it struggled to achieve profitability. The airline was burning through cash at an alarming rate, with its operational expenses far exceeding its revenues. The glamour and luxury came at a price that the airline's balance sheet simply could not support in the long run. The 2008 global financial crisis and the subsequent economic slowdown dealt a severe blow to Kingfisher Airlines. Fuel prices soared, and passenger demand, especially for premium travel, began to wane. The ill-fated acquisition of Air Deccan proved to be a strategic misstep. The attempt to merge a low-cost carrier with a premium airline created an operational nightmare and failed to deliver the expected synergies. Instead, it burdened Kingfisher with massive debt and operational losses. Mallya's decision to rebrand Air Deccan as Kingfisher Red, a low-cost arm of the airline, only confused customers and failed to stem the financial bleeding, adding to the mounting pile of liabilities. As the financial situation worsened, the airline began to default on its obligations. Payments to oil companies, airport operators, and aircraft lessors were delayed. Most critically, the airline started defaulting on salary payments to its employees. Pilots, cabin crew, and ground staff went for months without pay, leading to widespread employee unrest, strikes, and protests. The once lauded service quality began to deteriorate rapidly as morale plummeted. Flights were frequently cancelled or delayed, and the airline that had once been a symbol of reliability and luxury became a cautionary tale of corporate mismanagement. The good times had definitively come to an end. By 2012, the situation had become untenable. With debts running into billions of dollars and no credible plan for a turnaround, Kingfisher Airlines was forced to suspend its operations. Its flying license was revoked by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation after it failed to provide a viable plan to resume services. The collapse of the airline left a trail of destruction in its wake. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, creditors were left with huge unpaid bills, and the consortium of banks that had lent enormous sums to the airline was faced with one of the largest corporate defaults in Indian history. The high-flying dream had crashed to the ground. The collapse of Kingfisher Airlines was not just a business failure. It soon spiraled into a major financial scandal. The airline had accumulated a staggering amount of debt, primarily from a consortium of 17 Indian banks led by the State Bank of India. The total outstanding amount was estimated to be over 9,000 crore rupees, or more than $1 billion. These loans had been extended to the airline based on the strength of Vijay Mallya's personal guarantees and the perceived value of the Kingfisher brand. As the airline went under, the banks were left with a massive hole in their books, and the process of recovering the money began to unravel a web of alleged financial impropriety. Central to the controversy were accusations of fraud and the diversion of funds. Investigating agencies, including the Central Bureau of Investigation and the Enforcement Directorate, alleged that a significant portion of the loans obtained for the airline was not used for its stated purpose. For instance, a loan of 900 crore rupees from IDBI Bank came under intense scrutiny. It was alleged that Mallya and senior officials at Kingfisher Airlines conspired with bank officials to secure the loan despite the airline's poor financial health and negative credit ratings. Investigators claimed that hundreds of crores from this loan were diverted to shell companies and potentially used for Mallya's personal expenses or transferred to his other businesses overseas. These allegations led to serious criminal charges. Mallya was accused of cheating, criminal conspiracy, and money laundering. The Enforcement Directorate claimed that he had structured a complex network of transactions to siphon money out of India. The loans, which were meant to revive the struggling airline and pay for operational costs like fuel and salaries, were allegedly rerouted to offshore tax havens. These accusations painted a picture of a deliberate and systematic effort to defraud the banks. The personal guarantees that Mallya had provided were also called into question, as he seemed to have no intention of honoring them once the airline collapsed, shifting his assets beyond the reach of Indian authorities. As the legal pressure mounted, Mallya's defense was that the collapse of Kingfisher Airlines was a commercial failure, not a crime. He argued that he had made genuine efforts to save the airline and that the financial crisis was a result of adverse market conditions and poor government policies. He consistently denied the allegations of fund diversion and money laundering, portraying himself as the victim of a political witch hunt. However, the evidence presented by the investigating agencies suggested a different story, one of willful default and a premeditated plan to deceive the lenders. This set the stage for a protracted legal battle that would span continents. As Indian banks and investigative agencies closed in on him, Vijay Mallya made a swift and decisive move. On March 2, 2016, he boarded a flight to London and left India for good. His departure came just days before the consortium of banks was due to move the Supreme Court to impound his passport. The timing was no coincidence. It was a calculated escape from the mounting legal and financial storm that was brewing in India. He left behind a legacy in tatters and a host of unanswered questions about the billions of rupees owed by his defunct airline. His flight to the United Kingdom marked the beginning of a new chapter in the saga, that of a fugitive from Indian law. Once in the UK, Mallya settled into his luxurious properties, including a mansion in London's prestigious Regent's Park and a sprawling country estate in Hertfordshire. From this safe distance, he continued to deny any wrongdoing, using social media as his primary platform to communicate with the Indian public and media. He maintained that he had not fled the country, but had simply moved to the UK, where he had been a resident for decades. He argued that he was being unfairly targeted and made a scapegoat for the banking system's problems. His presence in London, however, was seen by Indian authorities as a clear attempt to evade justice and the legal process back home. The Indian government immediately initiated proceedings to bring him back. The Ministry of External Affairs revoked his passport, and a formal extradition request was sent to the UK government in February 2017. The request was based on the charges of fraud and money laundering filed against him by the CBI and the ED. This triggered a long and complex legal battle in the British courts. Mallya was arrested by Scotland Yard in April 2017, but was granted bail almost immediately. He then used every legal avenue available to him to fight his extradition, arguing that he would not receive a fair trial in India and that the conditions in Indian prisons were inhumane. The extradition case progressed slowly through the UK's judicial system, from the Westminster Magistrates' Court to the High Court, and finally to the UK Supreme Court. In a major victory for the Indian government, the UK High Court upheld the extradition order in April 2020, dismissing Mallya's appeal. He was denied permission to appeal further to the Supreme Court, seemingly exhausting all his legal options. However, his extradition has been stalled by a confidential legal issue, widely believed to be an application for political asylum in the UK. This process, which has been ongoing for nearly 4 years, has kept him in a state of legal limbo, safe in the UK, but a declared fugitive in his home country. While the battle to extradite Vijay Mallya continued in the United Kingdom, Indian authorities launched a parallel and aggressive campaign to recover the public money he owed. The Enforcement Directorate, or ED, took the lead, using the powers granted under the newly enacted Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018. Mallya was actually one of the first individuals to be declared a fugitive economic offender under this law. This designation allowed the government to confiscate his properties, both in India and abroad, even before a criminal conviction was secured. The primary goal here was to attach and liquidate his assets to repay the consortium of banks that had been left high and dry by the collapse of Kingfisher Airlines. The ED methodically attached a wide range of Mallya's assets. This included his shares in United Breweries, other companies, luxury cars, real estate properties across the country, and other valuable holdings. The process was painstaking, involving legal challenges at every step, but the agencies were relentless. The attached assets were then handed over to the consortium of banks, which began the process of selling them to recover their dues. This marked one of the most significant asset recovery operations against an individual in India's history, sending a strong message to other willful defaulters that the government was, really serious about tackling economic crime. The results of these efforts have been substantial. In December 2024, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a significant milestone in the recovery process. She informed the Lok Sabha that Indian authorities had successfully recovered and restored a staggering 14,131.6 crore rupees, which is approximately £1.413 billion, to the public sector banks through the sale of Mallya's assets. This figure was part of a larger success story for the Enforcement Directorate, which had managed to restore a total of 22,280 crore rupees to victims of fraud from various high-profile economic offenders since July 2023, including assets related to fugitives like Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi. This recovery amount is particularly notable because it far exceeds the principal loan amount that was originally disbursed to Kingfisher Airlines. The original debt, as determined by the Debt Recovery Tribunal, stood at 6,203 crore rupees, which included a significant interest component. The fact that the government managed to recover more than double this court-adjudged amount was presented as a major triumph for the Indian legal and financial system. It demonstrated the effectiveness of the new laws and the coordinated efforts of multiple government agencies in holding economic offenders accountable, even when they had fled the country to escape justice. Despite being a declared fugitive, Vijay Mallya has never really been silent. From his base in the United Kingdom, he has waged a relentless public relations campaign, consistently challenging the narrative presented by Indian authorities. He has frequently used social media, particularly the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, to present his side of the story. Following the government's announcement in December 2024 about the massive recovery from his assets, Mallya immediately went on the offensive. He publicly disputed the figures and the legal basis for the recovery, arguing that the government's actions were unjust and punitive, going far beyond the scope of simple debt recovery. In a series of posts, Mallya presented his own set of numbers. He claimed that the Debt Recovery Tribunal had originally set the total liability of Kingfisher Airlines at 6,203 crore rupees, a figure that already included 1,200 crore in interest. He argued that since the banks had now recovered over 14,131 crore rupees, they had taken more than double the amount they were legally entitled to. He questioned the justification for this excess recovery, which he calculated to be nearly £700 million, and declared his intention to legally pursue relief for this amount. He framed himself not as a defaulter, but as a victim of an overzealous government that had expropriated his assets. This public defiance is a key part of his strategy. By repeatedly offering to pay back the full principal amount of the loans, an offer he claims to have made since 2016, he attempts to portray himself as a willing settler rather than a willful defaulter. He questions why he is still branded a fugitive economic offender when the banks have been made more than whole. On his birthday, December 18, 2024, he exchanged messages with fellow fugitive businessman Lalit Modi, lamenting that we both have been wronged in a country we tried to contribute to. This narrative aims to garner sympathy and cast doubt on the motives of the Indian government and its agencies. However, Indian authorities view these statements as attempts to mislead the public and obstruct justice. They argue that Mallya's offers to settle came too late, only after criminal proceedings for fraud and money laundering were initiated. The charges against him are not merely about loan default, but about the alleged criminal conspiracy to defraud banks and divert funds. Therefore, simply repaying the loan does not absolve him of the criminal charges. His defiant stance from London continues to be a source of frustration for the Indian government, which remains committed to his extradition to face trial on Indian soil for the serious financial crimes he stands accused of. Beyond his troubles with the Indian government and banks, Vijay Mallya faces another formidable legal adversary in the form of Diageo, the world's largest spirits company. This dispute stems from Diageo's acquisition of a controlling stake in Mallya's flagship company, United Spirits Limited, a deal that was finalized in 2013. The partnership, which was initially seen as a strategic move for both parties, quickly soured, leading to a bitter and protracted legal fight in the civil courts of both London and India. Diageo has been pursuing Mallya for over £250 million, adding another layer of complexity to his already extensive legal woes. The core of Diageo's claim revolves around payments made to Mallya during and after the acquisition. As part of the deal, Diageo agreed to pay Mallya $75 million to step down as chairman of United Spirits and to sign a non-compete agreement. However, Diageo later discovered what it described as improper transactions and financial irregularities that occurred under Mallya's watch. The company alleged that funds had been diverted from United Spirits to other Mallya-owned entities, including the now-defunct Kingfisher Airlines. Consequently, Diageo halted the remaining payments and initiated legal action to recover the money it had already paid, plus other funds it claimed were misappropriated. The legal battle has primarily played out in the High Court in London. Diageo and its subsidiary, United Spirits, have aggressively pursued their claims, seeking repayment for what they allege were breaches of agreement and unauthorized financial transactions. They have managed to secure some victories along the way. The London court has already granted a partial judgment in Diageo's favor for a significant portion of the claimed amount, ordering Mallya to repay tens of millions of pounds. However, securing the judgment is one thing, enforcing it is another. Mallya has reportedly not complied with the court's repayment orders, leading to further legal wrangling. This ongoing civil lawsuit demonstrates the breadth of the financial and legal challenges confronting Mallya. It is separate from his extradition case and the recovery efforts by Indian banks, yet it is intertwined with the same pattern of alleged financial misconduct. The claims from a global corporate giant like Diageo add further pressure and scrutiny, undermining Mallya's attempts to portray himself as a victim of a purely political vendetta in India. The case serves as a constant reminder of the complex web of financial dealings that characterized the final years of his business empire and continues to dog him in his UK exile. As of mid-2025, Vijay Mallya remains in the United Kingdom, a free man in London but a convicted fugitive in India. His future is suspended in a state of legal limbo, caught between the finality of the UK court's extradition order and the confidential asylum process that has so far prevented his return to India. While he has exhausted all conventional legal appeals against being sent back, the secret legal issue, believed to be his asylum claim, has created an indefinite delay. The British government has repeatedly stated its commitment to extraditing him, but has also noted that it cannot act until the confidential legal matter is resolved, a process that has no clear timeline. The Indian government, for its part, continues to exert diplomatic pressure on the United Kingdom to expedite the process. The Mallya case has become a litmus test for Indo-UK cooperation on justice and law enforcement. For India, bringing Mallya back to face trial is a matter of national importance, a symbol of its resolve to combat high-level corruption and financial crime. Meanwhile, the The asset recovery process continues with authorities looking to identify and liquidate any remaining assets to satisfy court decrees. The legal machinery in India remains poised to prosecute him on charges of fraud and money laundering the moment he sets foot back on Indian soil. Mallya's own statements suggest he will continue to fight his case through public appeals and any legal means available to him. His recent challenge to the recovery amount, claiming the government has taken far more than what was owed, indicates a strategy to shift the narrative from one of a fugitive evading justice to that of an individual whose rights are being violated. He is likely to pursue this claim for relief in the courts, further complicating the legal landscape. This dual strategy of fighting extradition while simultaneously challenging the financial recoveries keeps his case active and in the public eye, preventing a quiet resolution. What happens next is, honestly, quite uncertain. The resolution of his asylum claim is the most critical variable. If it is denied, his extradition could proceed relatively quickly. If it is granted, it would create a major diplomatic rift between India and the United Kingdom and effectively shield him from Indian justice. In the meantime, he continues to live his life in London, a ghost of his former King of Good Times persona, embroiled in a multi-front legal war with no clear end in sight. The saga of Vijay Mallya serves as a powerful and ongoing lesson on the spectacular heights of ambition and the devastating consequences of a fall from grace.